Welcome to the Book Party Podcast. Join us as we journey into the world of books with Michael T. Prepare to be captivated by engaging interviews, insightful discussions, and fascinating stories. You'll discover new adventures and gain insight into the creative process of the authors themselves as they share their struggles and accomplishments. Now let's hear from Michael T.
This is Michael T. Thank you for being with us here this morning. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to the bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab up on the top, and then scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, where you can download and follow us there. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Today, I would like to introduce our guest, David Shapcott, and his new book, Days of The Asylum. David is from New Zealand and has a BA in philosophy and psychology, was a retired social worker and a registered psychiatric nurse, certificate in English language teaching adults. David has also worked as a probation officer and a psychiatric nurse. Novel Days of the Asylum. Retired at age 70 after 40 years in nursing, informed by his experience in mental health services. He wrote The Face of the Rapist, published by Penguin Books in 1988. In 2004, he took time out from nursing to live and work in Vietnam teaching English. Days of the Asylum is a semi-autobiographical novel based on his life and experience. The 1980s were the final years of the large psychiatric hospitals there and internationally. Most staff and patients saw the move to a community as a good thing. The hospital provided a secure and stable environment for others, and they fought hard to keep them open. David, why don't you take it from here, fill in some of the blanks, and tell us, the listeners here, a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Michael. Yes, well, as you say, I worked for 40 years in psychiatric nursing. Much of that at the beginning was in the Carrington Psychiatric Hospital in the days prior to its closing. And this was a very, very interesting time, which is what I've written about in my novel. And I guess that a lot of folks in the United States who were around psychiatric hospitals at that time could also know just what that meant and how difficult it was for everybody. And when the hospital closed, I moved out in the community, and I eventually got involved in addiction counseling. And I spent the last 20 years of my working life in the detox unit, helping alcoholics and drug addicts to overcome their addiction. So that was also extremely interesting time. And as Michael says, I did a certificate in English language teaching for adults, and I went over to Vietnam and lived there for a number of months teaching English and learning about the culture. It was a very, very interesting time, and there I met an old lady who I kept visiting her until she died, and she was 104 when she died. She had fought for the Viet Minh against French colonial war rule, and she had been captured, put in the Hoa Lo prison, which the Americans called Hanoi Hilton, and there she was tortured by the French. She also fought at Dien Bien Phu, the last great battle with France. So I was really, really privileged to have met her and have shared some of the last years of her life with her. Great time.
Yeah, wow. You've done a lot in that period of time, that's for sure. So it's a good thing to be able to write write some novels and even memoirs, I guess. So, are you a self-publishing author in any of your works, or do you always use an agency?
Well, The Face of the Rapist was a non-fiction book, and Penguin Books published that. But when it came to the novel, Penguin Books said to me that debut novels didn't usually do very well, and that they would pick me up if I self-published and the novel did well. So I've got my fingers crossed for that. So, but when I say self-published, of course I had a lot of help along the way. So I was fortunate that my wife is an academic, and she went over my writing frequently, and she gave me the sort of feedback, I guess, that she gives her students, which you don't always want to hear, but you do need to hear. And when I first started writing, she said, look, this is just a series of anecdotes. It doesn't add up to a novel. If I wasn't your wife, I wouldn't bother reading this. So, and I needed to hear that, unfortunately. I also had help with a professional editor, a typesetter, a copy editor, printing, and cover design. So I had a little team around me that got this over the line.
Oh, sure. Okay. So, in your writings, maybe you can take us to a point in time that you would consider your worst author moment and tell us that story.
Oh, I remember that well. It was about 20 years ago, and I was writing every day, hours every day, and even I, after a while, realized it was just no good. And I had dreamed about writing a novel ever since my early 20s, and I'd really put a lot of work into it, a lot of fails along the way. And 20 years ago, I looked in the mirror and said to myself, Dave, you haven't got it in you, mate. I'm sorry, but you're not a novel writer. Get into something else. You've failed. So that was a pretty tough time, and it took me a while to feel okay about myself afterwards. But, you know, sometimes you just got to go through these tough times, and, you know, to look at myself and say, I'm sorry, but what you really wanted to do, you failed at, that was hard.
So what did you do with everything that you had already written?
Oh, I put it all to one side, hoping that this was just
Someday.
a temporary. Yeah, someday it would all come together.
Okay. All right. Then, at the same time, when you're in your writing career, let's call it that, what I like to describe what's called an epiphany moment. It doesn't matter if you're trying to go to sleep, if you're driving, you're in a shower full of soap, and all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off in your head at the big wow, oh man, I got it. And you got to find a pen and paper and write it down.
Hallelujah. I know that one too. That happened about 4 years ago. I had just retired, and I was doing what retired people do, pottering around the garden, going to the gym, visiting friends and what have you. And I was a bit of a loose end. And one morning about 4 a.m., I woke up and I had it. I had the inciting incident, all the plot points, the climax, the resolution. It was there. I jumped out of bed, rushed upstairs, got the computer out, and started writing it all down. My wife got up and took a picture of me, which I've still got, when I have that great moment. And it took a while after that, but you know, I had a little team who helped me get it over the line, and I'm really grateful to them. And I will always remember that 4 a.m. moment. It was a great moment for me.
Yeah, as soon as it hits you, you can't wait. You got to get it down, or you lose it.
You sure do. Yep.
So, come today, what is the one thing that you're most excited about, that you're most fired up about right now, today?
Well, from all the feedback I got from my wife initially about how she wouldn't read this if she wasn't my wife, when I finished this novel, she said to me, "This is a novel that I would recommend to my friends." And my editor said, "Dave, this novel's pretty good." Now, for your listeners who don't understand the culture in New Zealand, it's understated. So if somebody says to you, "Yeah, mate, that's not bad," what they mean is that's really good. So when someone says it's pretty good, they mean this is a winner. So
Yeah, exactly.
At that point, I knew that I had it. And so I've got ideas now for 2 more novels, which I get up each day and do a little bit of work on. And I'm looking forward to bringing all those together.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. Again, this is Michael T., and I thank our listeners for being with us this morning. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on the top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice, where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, where you can download it and follow us there. And please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Okay, David, we're entering the lightning round. These are 4 pointed questions for 4 pointed answers. What was holding you back from becoming an author in the first place?
Right. Well, I had the idea for a novel, but I didn't know how to structure a novel. And for that, you either need to go to a creative writing course, or you need to check out there's an American writer, K.M. Wieland, and she writes how to write a novel. She's written about 9 books, and some of those are workbooks that you have to work your way through. So I would recommend anyone who wants to write a novel, check her out. She's on online, and K.M. Weiland, Weilan. She's great.
Okay. What, during your writing career, let's call it that, not like your 40-year, your other career, during your writing time, what was the best advice you had ever received?
Well, paradoxically, this comes from Woody Allen. And Woody Allen was asked what it took to be a success as he is. And he said, 90%, if you want to be successful at anything, 90% is getting out of bed in the morning, going to your desk and starting work. It's 90% of what is going to make you successful. And that's what I do. I get up each day and I just get onto the job. I don't do very much, but, I do a little bit every day.
Okay. Share one of your personal habits, a personal habit, that contributes to your success.
Well, I think that is it. That getting up every day and getting onto the job, and I also think Ernest Hemingway had another good one. He said, "If you want to be a good writer, read good literature." And I have got a list of great writers, and I've been working my way through them, and it really does help to lift your game plan.
Okay. Maybe you can share with our listeners at least one internet resource that you use.
Well, that would be K.M. Wieland. She writes helping writers to become authors, and she's written a number of books. She also, if you get subscribed to her, she will send out little podcasts on a regular basis, giving you good advice. She's great.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, now we are entering the grand finale. And here's what we're going to do for this. This is the place for you you can tell our listeners maybe where they can connect with you. They can connect with your book if you have different platforms that it's available, and talk about your book.
Well,
the floor is yours, David.
Thank you. Well, the book is set in 1988, just after the time that the hospital board announced that Carrington Hospital was going to close. Now, around that time, they also closed the ward for the criminally insane, and a lot of these staff and patients from that ward came into the general wards of Carrington. Now, these people were a lot tougher than the regular folk who had been at Carrington up until then. So this was a very, very stressful time for the staff and the patients. Many of the staff had anticipated working at Carrington for the rest of their working lives, just like previous generations had done. Suddenly, it was all very uncertain. It was all up in the air. Now, add to this was the reality that many people who work in psychiatric hospitals have mental health and addiction problems of their own. Now, my protagonist was one such person. Whenever life got stressful for him, he resigned and went off searching for this mythical place which was going to be stress-free, and he was going to live in bliss for the rest of his life. So as the story opens, he's beginning to accept that this mythical place doesn't exist for anyone. Everybody's got problems, and everybody's got to work on them. So he begins working on his problems. Now, as his mental health begins to improve, so he finds his moral compass. And he notices that there is a group of very tough nurses who've set up a fiefdom. This fiefdom is designed to meet all their wants, and anyone who gets in their way gets hurt. Now, my protagonist can do what he's always done, which is just to sit on the sidelines and pretend he doesn't see what's going on, or he can follow his moral compass, take a risk, face whatever he has to face, and just do it. Well, he takes the risk. Now, if you want to contact with me, I'm on a Wix site, and the site is drfeloniousdave, and I'll spell all that out. It's DR as in doctor, Felonious is FELONIOUS, and Dave is
like a felony.
Felonious is, when I was at university, I was very enthusiastic about Greek philosophy, and I'd come back to the hostel every night and I'd say, I just learned this about Aristotle or Plato or Sophocles or whatever, and after a while the people at the hostel would say, oh, here comes Felonious. What did Plato get up to today? So I picked up on that. And yes, and Dave, DAVE 3. So that's the Wix site, and you can connect with me there.
Yeah, it's on the it's on there for everybody too. The links and stuff too.
Great.
So you just want. I think it'd be a fantastic book because I remember the late 80s. I remember when they were letting everybody out of the mental hospitals, and the problem was there wasn't anywhere for them to go.
That's right, yeah.
And even now, when you look at a lot of the homeless on the streets, most of them belong to the mental hospitals that we don't have anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
So there's just not enough treatment. There's not enough anything. So, David from New Zealand, we thank you so much for being with us here today.
Well,
and
thank you,
opening up to
Michael.
us, and I'm sure our listeners do too. Again, this is Michael T., and I thank you for being with us this morning. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com. And hit that subscribe tab on top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms and download us and follow us there. And please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Book Party Podcast is owned and powered by MTM Legacy Publishing, LLC. This is Michael T. signing off.
You must not miss our next episode as we delve into a world of inspiration, entertainment, and thought-provoking insights. Join Michael T. on the next Book Party Podcast and experience a new adventure, a new story, and a complete immersion into the world of Pages Unveiled, Chronicles of the Writing Journey.